Okay, so we're continuing on with CSS layouts today and looking at floating divs. So I have some files set up here on the computer already. You'll notice that I have my local My Website folder sitting on my desktop, and I'm currently working in the floating divs folder that we've copied into Project 2 demo folder. So this is picking up from where our last video left off. So we're going to be working with one of these files. We're going to start with this one right here, 516, which is a one column with a header and footer. So I'm going to jump over into Dreamweaver. You should already have your site set up over here so that you can access your files. I'm working in Project 2 Demo. There's my floating divs folder. I'm going to jump in there. And the very last one, 516. So we were last looking at 12 through 15 when we were looking at document flow, but now we're in 516. So I'm going to open this file up, and I'm going to hide my files panel and expand my CSS designer panel here so that I have enough space to actually work here. So get these expanded a little bit. Okay, so what I want to look at right now, we've looked at the idea of floating divs, kind of what the theory is, what they can do. What we want to look at now is how we actually do these in Dreamweaver. How do we make this modification? So the first one that I want to do is take an existing file here that we're familiar with the structure, and then creating a float in it. So we're not going to start from scratch. The next video will be starting from scratch. So in this case, we have a file that has a header up at the top. So that's just a simple div that goes full width. After that, we have a content div. It is also full width. And then below that, we have a footer div, and it is full width. So these three divs, the way that you see them here, are the same as the document flow, one following the other. Nothing has been floated, therefore nothing has been taken out of the document flow. So what we want to do is we want to insert a div. We're going to put it before the content div, our main one here, and we're going to float it off to the left, and then we're going to float the content div to the left after it, so it'll slide up and sit to the right of it. So that's what we want to work on right now. So because we want our sidebar div to go in front of content, I'm going to come click within some of my content data here and slide down here to the lower left and select div content. Now I have the full div selected. Now this is the easiest way I found to insert a div short of going into code view. I can select a div, and once I have selected the whole thing, I can use the left arrow key on my keyboard and click the left arrow key once. Now I'm sitting immediately to the left of the div. However, I do want to point a couple things out. One is, if we look in Dreamweaver, you notice that the cursor looks like it's sitting immediately to the left of the I in its instructions, which is an H1. So this is deceptive. It doesn't look like I'm in the right place right here. If I go to code view and I look, so there's my cursor now, and now we note that the cursor is in fact to the left of my content div, and that's where I want it to be. So I am in the right spot, but in design view it's hard to tell. So this is one of those things where it's hard to trust the Dreamweaver interface, but I'll show you the best way to go about it without using code. So I'm going to do it one more time just so that we can all be sure we're in the right spot. So I'm going to select something in the content div, click and select the entire content div, because if I was to insert something now, it would replace this div. I don't want to do that. So with this one selected, I push the left arrow, and now I'm in front of the content div. Now I can go up to my insert menu and select a div, the first thing in the list there. Okay, I get my insert div dialog box, and what I'm inserting is sidebar. You notice it's going to put it at the insertion point, and it's a sidebar, and we know that sidebars could sometimes be used more than once, so I'm going to make it a class, and I'm just going to name it sidebar. Once I've given it a name, I'm going to say OK. now I have a new div in my file. You can highlight some of that. You can slide down here and click on the div tag and look carefully and see that the div sidebar is sitting within div container. If div sidebar here shows that it's within the content div, then you were clicked in the wrong spot. I would recommend undoing this, stepping back, and doing it again to make sure you get it right. But in this case, I have div sidebar sitting within div container. It's a lot easier to fix it right now if it's in the wrong spot than to go further along and try and come back and fix it. So while I'm here, I'm going to put a little content in my div. I'm going to highlight that text, and I'm just going to type headline. I'm going to hit return. I'm going to come grab some of this text down here just to get something in there. I'm going to say copy and paste it into this one. So I have something in my div. I'm going to highlight headline, and I'm going to go make it a heading too. Okay, so my sidebar now has some content in place. I'm going to click in there and highlight the div. So now you see that as my full sidebar div with a little bit of content in place. So now we are ready to start floating our divs. So as you recall, the sidebar div, we want it to float to the left so that we can have content slide up next to it. So two things that are required to float a div. We have to set a width on it, and we have to tell it to float. So now that I'm in Dreamweaver CC, remember how we go about creating a rule here. I highlight the item that I want, in this case my div sidebar. I'm going to come over to the CSS designer, and I'm going to click on my source. In this case, you see the style within brackets. That means that it's going to go just within this file. That's fine with me for our example here. At this point, I want to make sure that my div is still selected. I can see it selected there. I can see down at the bottom that it is. Sometimes it deselects it at this point, so I'd have to select it again. Then I come over here where it says selectors, and I make sure there isn't a rule for it already. So this is sidebar. I'm going to scroll through my list, and there's nothing here called sidebar. That's no surprise because I just created sidebar. It has not existed. So since it does not exist, I'm going to go to the plus side right here, add a selector, and it gives us a suggestion for the name. So dot container space dot sidebar. That works for us. That means a class of sidebar sitting within a class of container. That would be perfectly fine. Or I could come in here and I could delete container off of it and just make it say dot sidebar. That would give me a class of sidebar. Everything on my page sits within container, so I don't really have to say that. So I'm going to create that one, and then I'm going to click down here in Properties panel. It's acting funny. I'm going to come select sidebar again, in style, click on sidebar, click in properties. I know what's going on. I have the show set button on, so if this happens, make sure you deselect that. Now you have all of your options showing. Okay. The two things that I have to make it float. One, I have to give it a width. So at in the layout section, that's the top one up here. I know that my overall container is 1,000 pixels wide. So I'm going to keep the math easy. I'm going to make my sidebar be 200 pixels and my content area be 800. So I'm going to go to the width here, click on the entry point, set it to pixels, and enter 200. I'm going to hit the tab key just to take me to the next spot. Now at this point, we can see what it has done. It has taken my sidebar, it's made it be 200 pixels wide. Because it's narrower, the content, remember content establishes height, the content has pushed it down, so it's now taller. Because it does not float yet, it still occupies the same space. In other words, without it floating, this content div below is unable to slide up next to it. Okay? So you've just made it narrower, but it pushes down because of content. So let's go ahead and add the one other thing that we need. I have to be in sidebar. I'm going to come over here into the properties, scroll down a little bit until I reach this point here where it says float. Now I have these little icons. If you hover over them, you can see that that one is left, that one is right, and that one is none. I want to float left. It is on the left side because remember everything slides to the left by default. I want it to float left because I want to stay on that side, and then I want other things to slide up next to it. So I'm going to click on the float left icon right there. Once I have done that, you see that the content slides up next to it. Now it looks like I have a little bit of a problem. I have my sidebar where I want it. Content is here. This is where we expect it to be. But then you notice as it reaches the end of the sidebar to the left, the text then drops below sidebar, which is not what we wanted it to do. So you see this area right here is actually sliding down and below it. And that's because we've not floated the content div yet. So it's not creating an actual column yet. The thing that's actually a little bit deceptive, we can take this, let's highlight something in content and then select the content div. Now look at where my div actually is. You can see the top edge up here where it's yellow, and if you look over to the left, it's actually all the way to the left edge over here. So the content div is overlaid on top of our sidebar. And that's because when you float something, it takes it out of the document flow. So sidebar has been taken out of the document flow and content is overlaid on it. Now the text doesn't actually overlay because it runs over and it kind of runs into this, so it wraps around it. But that's what you're looking at right here. So to fix it, we need to actually go tell the content div to float now. So as with everything else, I'm going to highlight something within content. I'm going to go select my content div. That's the item that I want to edit, or I want to create a rule for. Once I have it selected, I come over here and I see if I have a rule for it. And I do have a rule for content in this case because it's already existed in this file. So I'll make sure that I have that one selected, and then I come down here to properties. So same two things are required to make this one float. I have to have a width right here at the top. So sidebar was 200. I'm going to make content to be 800. So I'm going to come down here to width and click on it. Select pixels and enter 800. And I'm going to hit the tab key just to take it out of there. Now again, this is not floated yet, so you notice that it has made it narrower and it's still overlaid on top of sidebar. So we have this gap over here. So the one more step, I need to scroll down to where it says float. Here's my options again for float, and I want this to float left. Now you could float this left or right. Sidebar has floated to the left. You could tell this to float to the right and it will slide up as it is right now and slide to the right and sit against the right hand side. Or if you tell it to float left, sidebar floats up and to the left, and then content floats up and slides to the left over against sidebar. Either one gives you the same outcome here. Personally, I like to float both of them in the same direction if possible. It just seems easier on my brain if I know that both of them are floating in the same direction. It seems less confusing to me. So I'm going to say float left, and you notice that it is actually sitting completely next to sidebar now. If I highlight it, you can see the whole thing. So it's sitting in an actual column now, and over here to the left is sidebar. It's sitting in a column. So now I have my two columns sitting side by side, so those are working well. Now as I did that, we had one other strange thing happen. Suddenly we had this light brown background slide up. So while I have my left column and my right column working, we've got this background color that wasn't there before. And if I go select footer, actually highlight the footer div down here, and I go look to see where my div is, you'll notice that my div is all the way to the left as I would expect, but it is actually all the way up to the top. So because of the float, we're running into the same type of problem we had a moment ago, where content was overlaying sidebar. We now actually have footer overlaying both of these. Now the text doesn't slide up because it runs into the others, but you can see it because of the background color. So what we need to do, this is the other thing we have to remember with floats, is when you're done floating, you have to clear the floats. Because floating takes elements, in this case divs, out of the document flow. When you're done floating, you have to tell the file that you're done and clear the floats, and therefore the next element, in this case footer, needs to be back in the document flow. So we have to go assign some CSS to footer. So I currently have footer selected. I'll go select it again. There's my footer div. As always, I come over here to see if I have rules for footer, and I do. It already exists. So now I'm going to come down here to my properties. I'll go up to the top so you can see where we are. There's the layout. I'm going to scroll down where we see there's float. We're not floating now, but immediately below it is clear. So I want to clear. Now when it comes to doing a clear, we have options again. We can clear left, we can clear right, and we can clear both. This is tied directly to the idea of float here. So in this case, I have floated both of my divs above left. So a clear left would take care of that. If you were floating right, then a clear right would take care of it. Or if you were floating in two directions, you would want to do a clear both. I would suggest that in all instances when you're doing a clear, just go ahead and clear both. That way if you ever make any changes with your float, your clears will continue to work, and there's no harm in doing a clear both. So I'm going to set clear to both, and once I do that, you notice that my footer is now contained down here completely below my two floated divs. So now we have our layout how we wanted it. I have a header at the top, I have a sidebar floated to the left, I have content which also floats left, but because it's coming after it, it floats up, moving to the left, so sitting to the right of sidebar. And then I have my footer again running full width below that. So now you've added a div and you have floated two divs so that you can get side-by-side columns. So to review, we just have to keep in mind that when we're applying floats, floats take the elements out of the document flow. So we've seen that, how they move them around that way, and they position them independently. We can shift an element to the left or the right until it reaches the edge of the containing element. So in this case, for instance, the content div here is sitting within container, or sidebar here is sitting within container. So it floats left until it hits the edge of container. It does maintain its current vertical position, so for instance it doesn't slide up into the header area. We also have to give all floated elements a width before we, well, it doesn't have to be before you do the float, but you have to do that as well so that it knows what space it occupies. And then when we're done doing floats, we must clear those floats so that we resume the normal document flow. So those are the basics of actually creating a float in Dreamweaver. The next video, we're going to go create a layout from scratch, establishing all of our divs and then floating the appropriate ones.